Good evening and welcome to City of Pasco Council special meeting and regular workshop. The council thanks you for being part of the city government. At special meetings, the council takes formal action on specific items and during the workshops only discusses issues with no formal action taken. Agenda packets are available on the City of Pasco's website at www.pasco-wa.gov/agenda. This meeting is being televised live on PSC-TV channel 191 on Spectrum Cable in Pasco and Richland and is streamed on City's Facebook page, website, YouTube channel, and GoToWebinar. This and previous council meeting video is available on the city's website. Lastly, the public may submit their comments and or questions by contacting the city manager, city clerk, or by using the Ask Pasco app. And with that, can I get the roll call, please?
Yes. Council members Brown,
Present.
Campos,
Present.
Milne,
Here.
Roach,
Present.
Serrano,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney,
Present.
and Mayor Barajas.
Present. And with that, can you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, It is 7:19, and we do need to extend the executive session for another 5 minutes to return at 7:24. Thank you. Okay, and it's 7:25. We are all back from executive session. We'll move on to item 4 on the agenda, unfinished business, ordinance amending council voting districts based on redistricting plan. And we have Mr. Ferguson, who has not returned from, he is on his way. Right there.
He's not back there, so I don't know where he's at. You lost him.
Before we get rolling, I'll go ahead and abstain from this action, so just grab me when we're done. Thank you.
Will do.
Thank you. Mr. Ferguson.
Okay, great. Thank you, Madam Mayor. This item that we currently have, the ordinance amending council district. So as folks were probably able to see in the packet that there's been a slight anomaly in some of the data between that the consultants discovered through the quality assurance process. So with that, at this point, my recommendation is that we need to ensure, based to be able to comply with the statute RCW 29 A 76010, we need to make sure that the proposed map that has been put out to the public that they have been able to comment on is in fact accurate and correct with the census data. There's been a disconnect, it sounds like, between the 2020 census block geography, which has changed since the original map was put forth in it. So there is some technical issues here, and I'm certainly not even remotely qualified to speak on them, but I will say that at this point we don't have confidence that the same map that was put out to the public would also be something that council would be able to consider based on the technical issues. So at this point, I would just request that we move to continue this to November 21st, and we should be able to be able to answer questions about the accuracy of where we're at and what's coming forward.
Thank you. And with that, can I get a motion?
Yes, Mayor Barajas. I'd like to move to continue this item to November 21st, 2022.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. There's a motion and seconded by Councilwoman Roach. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. And it passes with 6 votes, minus Councilman Serrano's absence. And with that, we will move on to item B on the agenda. Thank you. Item B on the agenda, ordinance number 4622, amendment to the Pasco Municipal Code related to ambulance rates. And we have Director Buckley.
Good evening. Tonight, we are looking back at, if you recall, October 11th, we brought a presentation related to the ambulance rate study. In the rate study, the consultant reviewed our revenues and expenses and plans for future fire stations and determined revenue requirements. For this request, we are returning to ask for a rate increase related to staffing of Fire Station 85. The rate increase is phased in so that as of 2026, rates are sufficient to support the expenses fully, as we have a SAFER grant right now that's helping us phase in the rate increase. And then in addition to that, there's a requested rate increase that we covered at the October 11th meeting for transport rates. They've not increased for many years, and so while we have calculated and increased the ground emergency medical transport rate that's passed on to the federal government to help subsidize Medicaid transports, we have not increased the other regular transport rates, so that is something we're requesting as well, and that is also a phased-in approach that will take about 10 years to get it so that the two are equal. One thing that did come up when we discussed this in October was what would the effect be on Medicaid or Medicare patients that are transported, and we did check with our billing company that produces the bills, and they assured us that that would not have an effect on those patients. And so that's, I don't think I have much else to tell you, just if you have questions, here to try to answer.
Thank you for that. Do we have any questions from council? Seeing none, thank you again for your presentation.
I do actually have a
Oh, you do. I thought you were going to say your motion. I apologize. We do have some
can do
comment questions.
So this is more for Mr. Lincoln. I just want, there's an email from a community member asking about what is our overall fees and how do they compare to their surrounding municipalities, et cetera. And you responded to that email, and I just wanted to see if you'd give you an opportunity to summarize that a little bit of what is our plan to look at that. I know it's something that council's asked for in the past. I don't think we've gotten a comprehensive look at that yet. So this is one piece of it, and it always feels like we're dealing with these small chunks in isolation when overall there's an entire picture of how much we are charging developers and our residents.
Yeah, and I think it's a fair question that's been posed to staff. I think the goal is to have a better handle on that analysis sometime at the end of the year. Is that right, Rick? Towards the end of the year is when we'd be able to get a better handle. And one of the things that we're going to also do is look at a specific project in Pasco and look at how the fees would stack up on that specific project if it were taking place in both Kennewick and Richland. The city managers of the two other cities and West Richland representatives have also said they'd be interested in the outcomes of this analysis. So I think it's timely.
Great. I don't necessarily want to hold this up. I think the staff has made a compelling case here for why we need to adjust specifically ambulance rates. And I appreciate that it's that the people who are most vulnerable in the community are going to be a bit insulated from the impacts of that as well. So I appreciate both those things. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you.
All right. With that, I guess I'll make a
No
motion.
further questions.
I move to adopt ordinance number 4622, amending the Pasco Municipal Code, section 3.35.010, ambulance utility fees, effective January 1st, 2023, and further published by summary only.
There's a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Serrano. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. And it passes unanimously. Thank you for that. And with that, we now go into our council workshop meeting. And with everything else out of the way, let me just pull up my agenda here real quick. We move on to item 4 on the workshop agenda, reports, verbal reports from council members. Are there any reports from any of the council members for this past week? Councilman Campos.
I'll keep mine brief, Madam Mayor. I was unable to attend the BFT Board of Directors monthly meeting. I had a trip to Alaska. Why I brought this up is I was able to get myself stuck into a ditch on the way up to Alaska. And just to note, kind of illustrate how small this world is, one of the plow drivers who was able to help get me unstuck actually was a public works guy over at the city of Richland. And he literally moved over there like 2 weeks ago, lived in Kennewick. I was like, wow, small world. So shout out to public works and everything those guys do.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for being here. Sounds like it was a real trip. Any other comments? Councilman Brown.
Not comments, yes. Ms. Ferguson, you got me? Okay. Stop me when you need to. Just a couple comments. As we all know, I was absent on last week, and I wasn't able to attend the meeting. I tried to address this the best way that I could. Last week's meeting, I did watch it. My public statement to the city of Pasco is that I was appalled by a portion of the meeting. I was greatly offended. I don't know if this is the floor for that, but this is just my moment. I'm very disappointed at how I am constantly attacked for just simply being an African American male who is qualified to sit in this chair and complete the assignment that has been given to me by appointment. I am more than qualified to continue with the race that's coming up soon. I have done due diligence in this committee, and I'm processing how the city of Pasco has allowed this type of conversation or entertain the disrespect to not only to me directly, but to the African American community. It is not accepted by me. I've sat mute the first time that this happened. Full support from this council, and I'm grateful for that. But I will no longer be targeted and shamed for being a black African American male who is successful in the city. So that is no longer accepted. And I believe this gentleman is Mr. Cortines, if I have it right, in the LBA. So I'm calling it out for what it is. And I am looking for the best support from the city of Pasco to not allow. We have crossed the line with colorism, racism, segregation. I watched it. And I'm very disappointed that this is even allowed. We have come margins from where we were. And I refuse to continually sit on a mute button and let someone disrespect myself and my culture. It's unacceptable. This is what we should not entertain. We should be lifting this city to higher heights, and we should do it together. So based on the color of my skin is what this conversation has been about. I'm asking that the city look into this lawsuit and really break it down for what it was. Because in my interpretation is that the lawsuit was so that a black person couldn't sit on the council. That's what I keep hearing. So my experience is just that. On the last meeting on last Monday, again, I was defamed for being who I am. I am a mover and a shaker in this community. Let my record speak for itself. But to shame me for being appointed who qualified under the same process as anybody else, skin color, size, or height, I came out victorious. Why is that? Because I was black and a Hispanic person was not chosen is beyond me. I am mortified by this behavior and I will no longer accept it. I am a well-qualified constituent to sit here with these intelligent people. And nothing in this city should allow this type of behavior to push down the progress that we've made as a community and as a people. So I stand strong to tell you, no more. No more. I'm proud of Pasco for being diverse. I'm very proud of Pasco for being inclusive. This is why I'm here. I'm different on purpose. I'm a peculiar people on purpose. We all have something to bring to the table. But I'm asking the city of Pasco, who's ever watching this, do not allow this any longer. This is unacceptable. And if I'm protecting this city the way that I have been, and I can't get the same report, we need to get back, we need to get back to the table and see what this looks like. So again, I'm mortified. I want to make sure that's very clear. I'm highly offended. And I give to Pasco more than what I even have to give to Pasco because of the great love that I have for Pasco. And I believe that I represent and I look like my district. If there's not an African American person sitting here, then what do our communities look like? So should it be a full panel of Hispanic men and women? I don't believe that's what we set up for. Let's read the values. Let's read the vision statement. Let's put it all together and see if it matches what Mr. Cortines has stood up here and said. He's disappointed. He's upset. He's done it twice to me publicly. Twice. The first time, I took it like a champ. So I'm reiterating, Pasco, I need you to step up. This should not be acceptable. I'm getting phone calls after phone calls. And after the 2 weeks I had, there's no way I'm going to let this gentleman, and he'll be that on tonight, really interrupt my processes and how I want to give to the city of Pasco through my servanthood and my commitment. He does not get that from me. And I need your support to show me that as an African American male, I have the same opportunities as anyone else in this community. So those are my comments, and I appreciate you all letting me have that because I was not here due to an urgent matter in my family, but that still does not give the right to Mr. Cortines or the Latin Business Association. And if he's showing up as the representative for the Hispanic community, this should be addressed. So to the Hispanic community, if this is your representation, we now have a problem. This is unacceptable. And if this continues to happen, we have to address this as a communicative, articulate, intelligent group of people to say that we can get past this. I am more than willing to sit down with Mr. Cortines and find out what the problem is that is halting us doing great work in this community. And I'm saying it publicly because it's not acceptable. We as a collective, different group of people have come too far for one person to destroy the cultural efforts that we have made. And if we continue to stay on mute, like I did, out of being courteous and being a gentleman, I'm qualified. My record speaks for itself. I was appointed because something that they saw in me was going to add value to what the city of Pasco needed. And I will run next term, and the people will speak. And I will be satisfied with what that is, but I will not be under the umbrella of racism, segregation, and colorism. It's out. So God bless you, City of Pasco. I appreciate you for the opportunity, but we must stand for what we believe in order to move forward. So God bless you again, and thank you, and I'm done.
Councilman Brown, thank you very much for your comments. Want to reiterate what we've said before. As this council currently sits, we represent the city of Pasco. Every color, shape, and form, we represent the city of Pasco as we currently sit. Councilman Campos, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to reiterate I think what we saw in Councilman Brown is the reason what he spoke on tonight. And I thank you, Councilman Brown, for being articulate and to the point. And you do have the support of this council. And I know your comment was targeted to the citizens of Pasco, and I hope that they heard you loud and clear. We're no longer a sundown city. We do not need to step back, right? Councilwoman Roach had some very nice words, pointed, and I would very much agree that I would like to not hear those comments again in these council chambers. A welcome free speech, but there's a limit to, I think, what we are willing to listen to. So.
Thank you. Any further comments? Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor Bras, and thank you, Councilmember Brown, for sharing your vulnerability, your frustration, and as Councilmember Campos said, articulating it so well. I've been thinking about that off and on for the last week, and I'll be honest, I'm a little ashamed of myself because I didn't speak up. I'm grateful for Councilmember Roach for having done so. And I don't know what exactly I expected of that individual, but I guess it wasn't as surprising as I thought it should be. And so I didn't feel like I needed to step up. And what your words tonight really cemented that my feeling was correct. I should have spoken up at that time and let him know how unacceptable it is. And I will certainly do so now. That sort of behavior, those sort of comments, that sort of thought process is not acceptable in my eyes in the city of Pasco or any city. And I'll endeavor to do better to speak up and fight against that myself as best I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, again, Councilman Brown, thank you for being part of City of Pasco, part of this council. We'll move on to item 5 on the agenda. Resolution Basin Disposal Incorporated 2023 proposed rate increase. Director Worley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. This is an item that we see annually. You may recall, most of you, we come to council each year to evaluate whether a rate increase is appropriate for our contract with Basin Disposal. We did receive this year a request, as we typically do, towards the end of the year. And as we typically do, we had a subcommittee of council members to help review the proposal and have a discussion about it. And this year has proven to be a bit of a challenge with some of the inflation and things like that. One thing I will mention is that there have been requests already related to fuel surcharges for BDI, which is allowed for in the contract. And so another example of some of the challenges this year that BDI and many other companies are facing due to the current economic situation. And so with that, I would like to turn this over to Rebecca Francic from Basin Disposal. She's going to give you a quick presentation on the request tonight.
Good evening, Council. Rebecca Francic. So nice to be here tonight. I was here with you last week till 11:01. I promise I will be brief, and Mr. Worley said I would be brief. So I'm going to cover 3 topics tonight, and that is we're going to talk about just a service recap, the annual rate adjustment, and then any questions that you might have. So the first thing I want you to know is about the services that we offer. We have residential services. You've got 96-gallon cans, unlimited service in your neighborhoods. We've got an industrial service, commercial, and then we also have recycling in drop boxes. So in section 6.3.1 of your contract, we have an annual rate adjustment. And what it says, it adjusts contractually, It adjusts contractually agreed upon structures of rates based on the effects of inflation. So this works, we are allowed to take 80% of the CPI, Consumer Price Index, which works really great in low inflation environments. It's a little trickier in high inflation environments, but what I really want to leave you with is this does not increase our profit margin. It just allows our dollars to buy the same amount of service that they bought before inflation. So we are a very heavily regulated industry, Washington State, because we are the only garbage company here, so you don't have 4 or 5 garbage companies running down your street. As a consequence of that, Washington State, through the Utilities and Transportation Commission, regulates us. And they look at our rates and say, you can do this and you can't do this, and they also determine which indexes we use. So we are limited when we're looking at adjustment for inflation to the West Urban Size Class BC June data. And so when you look at June 2021 to June 20, it was 8.5% inflation. You take the 80%, and for 2023, we are asking for a 6.8% increase. So what does that mean for you? Well, it means you're paying $22.49 for a 96-gallon can 1 time a week. The 6.8% would give you $1.53 additional, and that means your new rate would be $24.02. We do have a senior citizen low income rate. You can see down there towards the bottom. That monthly rate is $11.23. They would see a 76 cents increase, and their new total would be $11.99. Now, as Mr. Worley mentioned, and those of you that were on the committee noticed, we have a 5% cap, and that's real. And like I said, it works really well in low inflationary environments. We sent this letter on July 21, and we showed you all our methodology, and it didn't occur to us that perhaps we should be telling you, hey, we've exceeded the cap. So we did not meet the letter of the law there. So what our request to you tonight is, well, we're gonna show you what some of your options are. So you can see over here on the left-hand side what the average annual CPI has been since 2012. You signed your contract, I think, in 2015. It was 0.4%. Then it was 0.9, 2.3. You know, it's been 2% or less for a long, long time. So you can go ahead and recognize we're using the same CPI index we did clear back when it was 3%, 4%, but all of a sudden inflation has jumped. So you could give us the 6.8% as we have asked for, knowing that inflation is what's driving this number. You could approve the 5% cap, and then you could begin a rate case with Basin. You do this regularly with your public works people. You'll go and do sewer rates and water rates because eventually you'll say the cost of service is more than we're charging. Or you can invite Basin to, you could approve the 5% cap and then invite Basin to resubmit a letter to staff explaining, hey, you've exceeded, or we have exceeded the 5% cap and we need approval for the additional 1.8%. Are there any questions? Mr. Brown?
Thank you. Just a slightly, the 5% increase. So are we max now in this moment?
Yes, because inflation alone was 6.8%. There is no additional tipping fees. Like 2 years ago, we had a tipping fee increase and we had there was a tax. Washington State put a tax through. So that brought us up. But this 5% is every year. It's an annual 5%. You can't exceed 5% that year. It's not from when the contract was originally signed.
Oh, okay.
So it's 5% annually.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Ms. Francic, I think the question then becomes, the projection is inflation's not going to significantly improve in 2023. In the event that happens, do we have any assurances that you would then try to seek to stay within the 5% in 23? I understand it's a case-by-case, year-by-year review. I think the concern I have is if we allow, like, number one, allow us to go at 6.8, and then next year we come at 6.8 or 7.2 or whatever the number is, I think I'd want some assurances that unless it's extremely significant, like 10 or 12%, that there wouldn't be an excess request above the 5% cap. And again, I don't believe BDI right now is in the position to make that agreement, but knowing that I'll be here at this time next year, I won't be happy if unless there's a real strong case to be made, if it exceeds 5%, if we allow it above that. I'll make that statement.
Okay. So I just want you to look at this chart with, on the left-hand side, you can see everything went 4.9 was in 2021, and then it went to 8.5. My dentist loves Ronald Reagan. I don't have the same feeling about Ronald Reagan. We moved to the Tri-Cities. Do you know what mortgage rates were? 18%. So I cannot guarantee in this environment, this is the Fed who is cutting back and trying to keep inflation in check. As a consequence, everything costs more. Anybody who's trying to buy a house knows that. That is not a guarantee I can make you. What I will tell you is our margins stay the same. It does not increase our profit margin. We're a low margin company, but we turn things over frequently, and we are highly regulated. Every other garbage company in the state is doing this exact same presentation.
No, I understand the global economics here, and I don't expect the commitment. Aside from obviously, there's going to be continued good faith negotiation throughout the year. That's been our 15-year +1+1+1+1 commitment, right? That's how we operate, somewhat at a handshake agreement to a degree. I just want to express that in the event, from my personal perspective, if we're going to allow an exceedance here, unless there's a real strong case, I will not be inclined to exceed the cap next year. And again, I don't ask for assurances. I mean, God willing, things will change, right? And our numbers look better next year. I don't think the tea leaves tell us that, but I don't have that crystal ball. So that's just a blanket statement that in the event, from my perspective, if we exceed it, I'm very concerned of what next year looks like. Not so much for myself or some other people, but there are folks who, $1.76 or whatever our number is per month is significant. So I'll simply leave it there.
One thing I can tell you is in 6.3.7, if it exceeds 5%, there's a clause that says we come before you, and just like you reviewed the contract this year, we would come, and this time we would point it out a lot earlier. We'd show you all of our methodology, and then you have the opportunity to say, yeah, those numbers don't lie, or gosh, we disagree.
Right. Thank you.
You bet. Any other questions?
One more comment from Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor Barajas, and thank you, Ms. Francic, for coming for us. I do not feel comfortable tonight authorizing anything over the 5% cap that's in the contract. Contract negotiations, which what you're asking for is for us to revisit and renegotiate a contract with a for-profit business at the expense of our taxpayers is something that I would not want to make a hasty decision on. I'm comfortable at this time to approve the 5% cap, and if BDI would like to enter conversation and negotiation through staff, I'm open, of course, to hearing. Of course, we're open to hearing, but while I understand this, we placed the cap in the contract for a reason, and that was to protect our ratepayers. That contract was agreed to by both parties, and now we're in a situation where that clause matters. And to immediately say, well, that clause shouldn't matter because things are hard. I mean, I get that, and I get why small business, especially with one with tight margins, would be very concerned about losing out on that additional 1.8%. So I'm interested in having the conversation, but I am very skeptical of that. In fact, Ms. Francis, that cap may have been put in place. Well, you may have voted for that cap at some time in the past. So I don't see how we would want to unilaterally make a change to the contract without a lot of further conversation and some deep convincing of both staff and council that this is what we want to do here. So that's my position tonight.
I do have a question. Oh. Go ahead.
Just a comment. I'm not for or against it. Just what I've noticed as far as Ben Franklin Transit, there has been a lot of discussion, right? We're a fuel-based service, heavily dependent on it. A lot of discussion on what our expected costs have been versus what our actuals have been. There's a lot there, but we have found a way to mitigate our services and kind of shuffle things around. So I think that maybe goes hand in hand with some of the comments I'm hearing tonight, is there's a way to do business where you're not having to increase your rate to your ratepayers.
Could I just make one more comment? Mr. Serrano, you mentioned the 15-year contract. I want to explain that because people ask, why do you have such a long-range contract? A garbage truck is $640,000. And so if it's like buying a house, if we amortize that over 15 years in your contract, your garbage rates are lower. And as far as changing your routes around, garbage trucks don't have that flexibility. We have to pick your garbage up every single week. It's required by law. So there are very few things that we can actually change.
So my question to you, I was part of the committee last year. One of the questions that I had the last year that was explained to me during the committee meetings that we had is, again, taking into consideration sharing that extra cost with our constituents. Can you please explain the process for someone that is low income or considers to be low income to apply for the lower rate?
Actually, I cannot, because we mirror whatever your city does. So if your city establishes who's low income and they let us know they're low income, then we apply the low income rate. But that goes through your city administration.
So can someone at the city, I don't know who it would be, Director Worley probably, what is a process a resident of Pasco can apply for the lower rate for the BDI services?
I would have to check with finance.
We have a senior low income rate, and a community member brings in their tax return, income information, and has to be under a certain level. I can't cite to you what the income level is, but I can return and tell you what that is or share that information. And then once we've approved or checked that information, then we put them on the reduced rate. And it's re-verified once a
And
year.
I'm assuming it's based on the FPL, how it's determined, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
I just don't know
Is
what
that
percentage.
information, sorry to interrupt.
That's
Is that
okay.
information that is shared to the person when they come to your window? Is it something that is available? Do
yes.
they have to ask for it? Do they just, does someone at customer service say, hey, you know what, I noticed this, here's some information?
I know that the people that work at the customer service or utility billing area are very aware of it and look for opportunities to share that information. I can't guarantee they ask every person that comes to the counter about that, but they do have that in their sites and are trying to provide that, encouragement when they get the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, staff, for all of your comments. Is there further comment, Director Worley? Okay, so here's the reason why I'm asking all this. Because it seems that there's a gap. There's a gap on giving people the opportunity to apply for those that could be within that federal poverty level to apply for an opportunity for a reduced cost service. Again, it comes back to, I don't want to give people that extra cost. They may not know that there's a reduced cost. I'm with council on this. We need to review that contract.
I would point out that I happen to know a person who's low-income senior, and they qualify for reduced property rates, and they also qualify for reduced PUD rates. So there's an accumulated low-income advantage, not advantage, but
Opportunity.
a benefit, wrong words, yeah. A mitigation, thank you.
And so the reason why I ask is because I do work with a lot of people that don't even know that there's these services, there's programs that are out there, having to guide a lot of the senior community into either the courts, municipal court, or to who to talk to at our customer service. It's information that is not readily available. And so that's just a concern, are we missing an opportunity to have someone look for that assistance that they are eligible for?
Perhaps we could put that information on the bottom of billing.
And we have another comment from Councilman.
Yeah, I'm excited over here. I think this is good. Communication is the key to success. I think we're almost there, but I heard senior, what's the word I want to use? Discounts or special program for seniors. But we do have people that are not seniors that are struggling right now. And it's really hard for them. Where they're facing disconnect and so on and so on. What's out there for them? And the missing link is the information. Just literally right in front of them. It needs to be an educational piece all day long. I like the idea about the billing information on the bottom. Is there something at the service window that stands out and says, hey, list the qualifications. We use the word affordable a lot. So let's put it to work. So there may be pay brackets that some people are in, or certain housing complexes that they live in that they qualify for affordable housing. But would this program also apply? So it's kind of a win all the way around, I think, from what I'm trying to process. It's a win-win. So if the information is out there and it's right there, and this is what you're looking for, let's make sense of this request by also being a helpful information source to our constituents at the same time. So if we're going to do that, let's make something readily available for those. Because to me, that would cause a hardship to me. $1 makes a difference. Trust me, if you multiply it, it makes a difference. So that's just my comment on that. And how would that look? Because it's hard to get information already, but if it's not readily available at the place where I'm going to pay, it's more of a stress, and it's enough worry already with people that are not seniors. It's hard. You single parents, it's hard. So every which way we can help them, help the city, and be a blessing to what you're proposing. I say let's talk more about it.
I will tell you, when Risha Sigdel was your finance director, we worked with her with the ARPA so that we had forms where you could sign up for the PUD and Basin and what was it, property tax and whatever else they were relieving. Thank you.
City utilities,
All in
basin
one,
disposal, and PUD, all three.
all in one shot. So I'd certainly be glad to work over that with you. Just a little push on the other side. Mr. Campos, I don't know what you found with drivers, but we are finding our drivers can walk anytime because there are jobs everywhere. And so we certainly can't be reducing the rates that we're paying our drivers because they'll leave. And there are not that many people that are qualified to drive a garbage truck, let me tell you. It is like being in the cockpit of a plane. Any other questions?
Councilman Campos.
Yeah, on that, no, we, our drivers, what we found is, they're very loyal to BFT. That also has to do with they're making a nice, solid union wage and a good living. So why leave what you've got? Now, on the other note, this is more to council. This is listed as an item for discussion, so I wasn't fully prepared to take any action on this whatsoever at all. And I'm not feeling like I am in a rush to decide on option 1, 2, or 3. But I will say that I think the conversation has kind of gravitated towards low income and opportunities. I will say that I've been in a position before where every penny on my bill for services I had to scrutinize. I don't look at that anymore, thank God. I don't have to. I just throw my BDI mail away. But I know that they do provide a lot of really good information each month on how to look for additional services or if you need relief. And applying for those services at one time was super easy. Again, as you guys mentioned, I think all I applied for was low income assistance on my PUD bill, and it applied for all of the other services there. So I think it's more streamlined than it is. I'm pretty sure that information probably is at the bottom. It's readily available. It's easy to find. That's all. I think I'm just giving some context there. I think it's still a common practice. I just thank God that I haven't had to do that in a very long time now. So that's all.
Thank you for sharing that. Any further questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Francis. Okay, and with that, we move on to our next item on the agenda. The 2021-2022 Biennium Financial Update, third quarter 2022 by Director Buckley.
Good night, or it is good night. Good evening. It's a little blunt, sorry. I have provided the third quarter analysis for all the funds. It's very high level, and not a ton of detail, but it does give you the highlights. And so what's happening in so far through September 30th, 2022. This is just the PowerPoint, so I'll go kind of quick and hit the things that stood out to me. Our economic indicators have improved, especially those things that were pandemic related. Last couple of years, our taxation related to travel, tourism, and also the other tax revenue class is gambling, entertainment sorts of taxes, and those have rebounded also. And the other thing economically that is strong still is the unemployment rate is low. It's a little higher than statewide, but is lower than it was last year, so that's a good change. Business licenses continue to increase throughout 2022, and our permits overall are lower, and the revenue is lower too, but 2021 was very high, and overall, if I recall correctly, all the types were higher in count than 2021, just a little lower in amount because we had some big permit values last year. Charges for goods and services continue to be strong across the different funds in the city. One example is the enterprise funds, which are primarily the utilities. Revenue for charges for services as of the end of September was at 91%, and we'd expect it to be about 87%, so that's good. Sales tax revenue also remains strong, about $1.8 million a month. That's through September receipts, but reflects July's purchases because there's a time lag. As far as expenditures, we have a few categories that are a little under budget from what we'd anticipate: salaries and wages, as well as personnel benefit expenses. And part of that is a byproduct of vacant positions, and then also that there's some end of year holiday cash outs or vacation cash outs that will occur. One thing that has turned out well so far, that we were concerned about inflation, as many people are, and so far supplies and services through the end of September are under budget, so that's a good result. And then as we, timing of capital projects makes a big difference, and they're ongoing, but they're lagging. If we could just get them out, fast, and they were linear, but there's some lag there, so that's keeping our cash in our hands a little longer. When that does occur, we'll make transfers between the funds that support the capital projects. And then just right now, as we go to the close of the year, staff is in the finance department, and with help with other departments or with department staff other than finance, are looking at the fund level balances and seeing where we might need to come back at the next council meeting related to supplemental adjustments. So you'll be seeing that soon. And then the only other thing I wanted to point out is there have been, of course, federal interest rate hikes recently. There's one left planned in November. So far, that hasn't made a big difference in our sales tax revenue, but this fourth quarter, that will be something that we're definitely looking to see if there's more of an impact in this fourth quarter, but so far it stayed strong. So, and that is the extent of my presentation. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to try and answer them.
Thank you. Very brief. Very, very good presentation. Do we have any questions or comments from council? Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor Barajas. Just really quickly, if I understood this correctly, and I read all the backup information as well, which is much deeper in information.
Yeah.
Right now, we're in a healthy stance. It's been a good year up to where we actually have information for,
Right.
but we have strong reason to be concerned about how the year's going to end. We just don't know yet.
Yeah, it's hard to know for sure. We don't have a crystal ball. Through September, we have just the first 7 months worth of sales tax actual receipts. So as each month comes in, we look at it and try to see, is it dipping down or staying strong? And so far it has stayed at that strong level. It hasn't changed much from month to month. So as each month goes by, we'll definitely be paying attention and communicating back to council and other city staff.
I appreciate that, and that's very much top of mind as I'm reviewing the budget and thinking through what the projections were. So I appreciate the back and forth, the emails you've sent so far, and I will have more questions. But I think that comment there of just the lack of certainty about where our sales tax revenue is going to go, how's the economy going to be doing, how are the people of Pasco and the businesses in Pasco being affected, that's very highly on my mind as I try to figure out, well, we had to build off the sales projection, and this is one of our the largest single source of revenue for the city is sales tax, and so that matters a lot.
Yes.
So appreciate that, and I think I just want to make sure that everyone's understanding the context of what you just said there
Right.
is also part and parcel with the entire budget.
One thing that's helping us for sure in the past couple of years and moving into next year or the next biennium is we have some large projects that we know or anticipate they're planned to happen, and the sales tax revenue that will come from those construction projects will make a marked difference in the total revenue that we're expecting. But it is, we've gone from a few years of unique activity with COVID and the pandemic, and then we're kind of in a unique time now too, but luckily we do know some of those things that'll help us.
We hope for some of those things. Crossing our fingers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you again.
Thank you.
Director Buckley. We now move on to item C, resolution bid award for fire station number 85 construction, and we have Chief Kier for this.
Madam Mayor and Council, as you know, we've begun a process of developing the Fire Station 85 with the Phase 1, which was site work on Road 100 and the outside edge of the property, so to speak. That's in progress. It is running a little behind because we've had a very difficult time with Lumen /Quest getting them to do what they're supposed to do and move their stuff in a timely manner, and it's put us in a bind with them. But we're moving along. That project should wrap up fairly soon. And in the meantime, we did go to bid for the second phase, which is actual construction of the station. We got 3 bids, and council can see from the attached, they were all very close. Which usually indicates pretty good bid specs. A little bit higher than what we saw in the construction of Station 83. This station will be, in floor plan inside, will be identical to Station 83 when you're inside the building, but we did change the outside look a little to give it more of a residential look, since it's going in a residential neighborhood versus 83 fits in really well with the commercial that's around it. So essentially it's the same station with just some outside changes to give it more of a residential look. And with that, we would recommend awarding the bid to G2 Construction. We don't anticipate probably spending any money on this until we get into 23, since it's so late in 22, and for them to mobilize, get their stuff done. And we're going to encourage them to start ordering materials, since there's such a time lag on material delivery right now. So in the meantime, we'll get them started, and at least let them know that they're successful and going to have a bid award after hopefully next week's council meeting. So are there any questions?
Thank you for that. Again, very brief and concise. Do you have any questions or comments for Chief Gear? Councilman Serrano?
Yeah, Chief Gear, does G2 have experience in constructing these types of facilities?
Yes, they just finished a fire station last year in West Richland, a very similar size station. We have a requirement in our bid specs that bidders have to have done 3 projects of over $5 million in the last 5 years. So we do scope them in terms of size. We don't require fire stations, but yes, they have just finished a fire station.
Excellent, thank you. It's always nice that we have to award to the lowest bidder, but we're kind of trying to carve our way into experience. So I appreciate the foresight, whether it's you, Mr. Ferguson, or some combination there. Probably the secretary.
Yeah.
So
I'll gladly take the credit on this one for all the other ones he's stolen from me.
So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Comments from Councilwoman Roach?
Just wondering, Chief Gear, if you're doing the same thing, but not pre-ordering staff, I guess, trying to hire for staff and purchase equipment for the new station ahead of the game, since staffing all across is difficult. And
we are staffing up right now with the SAFER grant, so we will have the personnel available when this station opens. We're looking at a couple options on used fire trucks or something that we can get by with until we get our first leased vehicles in a couple years. So we're working on that to figure it out. And to be quite honest with you, we've had better luck with a couple of our older used reserve units that don't have all the electronics on them than we're seeing with some of our newer units. So we've got a couple options that we'll have in play. This station won't open. It'll be almost a year from now before we'd be in that station.
all right, thank you for that.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, thanks again, Chief, for your presentation. And with that, we move on to our next item on the agenda. Resolution Amendment Number 3 to interlocal agreement with Port of Pasco for Argent Road Project. And we have Director Worley for this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. In keeping with the spirit of previous meetings where I take the credit and staff does all the work, I'd like to turn this over to Maria Serra.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. This is the third amendment to our interlocal agreement with the Port of Pasco. As you are aware, the Port of Pasco, City of Pasco, and Columbia Basin College have collaborated in the bringing this project to fruition, which is the Argent Road Corridor Project. It's split into 3 phases. And this specific amendment to the interlocal agreement with Port of Pasco addresses the additional right-of-way needs and temporary construction easements that correspond with the portion of the project, which is phase 3, located along Argent Road on port property between Saraceno Way and Road 36. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions. Very brief.
Very brief. Thank you. Comments or questions from Councilwoman Roach?
Just a comment to Public Works Department that I've seen the construction in the construction phase and seen how it's improving and it looks really wonderful. So, good job.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Ms. Yara, thank you again for excellent presentation. No credit to Director Worley. We're joking. All right, next item on the agenda is the, skip. Item E, resolution amendment number 1 to professional services agreement with PBS Engineering for Broadmoor TIF Design Services. And again, Director Worley.
Thank you again, and as usual, turn it over to Maria.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members again. What we are presenting to you in this item is an amendment to our professional services agreement with PBS Engineering for full design of the first 2 phases of work associated with the TIF Broadmoor project, so that's tax increment financing area in Broadmoor. And I failed to include a map in the presentation, so we have a map in the screen in case that helps describe the scope. So the scope of the first 2 phases for construction of the improvements associated with TIF are: first phase, utilities to be located along Road 108, which is running north-south in that line. And you can see there is a red dashed line along the area of the city projects in that image. So Road 108 and Sandifer will have utilities installed, and that will be the first phase of construction. It's ideal to do that work as soon as possible before there is traffic on that area, and it also helps our systems to be fully functional as soon as more development occurs, specifically water. But the overall set of improvements includes irrigation, water, and sewer. And the second phase of improvements is along Broadmoor Avenue, not including the ramp. The ramp is a separate contract that is already under design. PBS will be designing improvements between the north end of the ramps towards Burns, including all those intersections, and along Sandifer in the vicinity of Road 103, if I'm looking at that right, and towards the east, just past that intersection with Sandifer, right? So that intersection is fully rebuilt as part of phase 2. What is not included in the scope of work with PBS at this time is all the improvements along Sandifer outside of that intersection with Broadmoor and the Road 108. Those 2 roads are currently planned to be core roads, which means it's only lanes of traffic for travel, and there is no curb and gutter. We have left those out of this current amendment to allow for the process to begin and evaluate how those bids come in and work on the most urgent improvements, which have to do with, of course, the utilities and Broadmoor itself, but also there's right-of-way acquisition and other processes that need to take place. So we want to be able to advance this process as fast as possible. I should say the original contract with PBS was specific to performing work that was conceptual work and full cost estimated, which allow us to then define what scope of work could be fit within the projected revenues of the TIF. And so while the selection of PBS was broad, including all the improvements that are now designing, the first contract was limited to provide the basis for defining what improvements could be included in TIF. And with that, this was not as brief as the previous one. I am happy to answer questions or clarify anything that wasn't clear.
Thank you again. Any questions or comments?
I guess my only comment will be that since this is a very new process, literally the first in Washington State to use this TIF, it means that it's dictating the build-out process in a way that we haven't done before. Is that accurate? And that we are doing street first and then gutter sewer later as we get Like, this is-
It's
seems a
not
little unusual.
uncommon in terms of how we build utilities and roads and work with developers on it. What is uncommon with the tax increment financing is how we pay for it. And we pay for it through the increase in property taxes from the development that occurs. So what we're doing is no different than any other project that we would typically do. And so in here, typically developers would be required to do all of that. But you may recall in the TIF evaluation, we did the but-for analysis, which said, but for these improvements, the development would not occur. So this is kind of adding to the utility and the road network that will eventually bring the developments into the Broadmoor area and create that increase in property tax value. And so the project that we're moving forward with is a typical utility project, road project, intersection projects, and we're going to be spending money. Finance is going to be finding bonds for it, and those bonds are going to be paid back by the increase in property tax revenues in the future. Does that answer your question?
That does answer my question. It makes a little bit more sense now in listening to this. And I guess I will say, are we, as this builds out, are we incorporating the things that we have learned from our transportation plan or planning to implement with our transportation plan in other areas? Like, for example, in Sylvester, are we doing that here with the 3 lanes? And I see you shaking your head, Maria.
Yes, there's components of the design that are fully coordinated with TSMP and the Broadmoor Master Plan, which is actually right now a draft, but it's close to completion. And we are incorporating all modes of transportation, specifically on those roads that are full road construction. So Broadmoor will have a pathway on one side, and of course there is sidewalk existing on the opposite side. The same is true for Sandifer and the portions that we're building full width of Sandifer at this stage, where not all modes of transportation are fully accounted for yet because they're not full streets, is where we are proposing to do core roads. So 108, for example. But those components are accounted for in the right-of-way width that is procured or dedicated. And as development occurs, there are standards that will apply, and those additional components will be added. But kind of like in a patchwork manner, as development occurs, those additional facilities will be incorporated.
So I guess I'll just ask this question, even though it's a little bit further down the road, but it's something I intend on using as well as my family. Are we waiting on developers to, or is it the city's responsibility to put in, as the roads are built out, to put in bike lanes in those areas?
Instead of bike lanes along Sandifer and Burns, there was an option to build multi-use pathways, which remove those more vulnerable travelers out of the road that we expect to see, where we expect to see high volumes of vehicular traffic. So yes, there will be bike facilities, but there will not be as bike lanes in the road, just based on volumes.
Okay. So similar to what's on Sandifer currently,
Yes.
heading west to 68?
And Chapel Hill
Okay.
as well. Yes.
Okay, thank you for answering that.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
Thank you, Mayor Barajas, and thank you, Ms. Sarah, for the presentation here. So, in general, our expansion of our city has generally had the developer building the entire road, and then we foot a portion of the build in some form or fashion, or the infrastructure we pour, or the upsize charge, as it were. The good part about that is it's one construction, so it's all the way down one. There's no dividing lines where things are done differently, or there's cuts across them or anything like that. When we're doing the core road here, and then later, as the development comes in, they then build in any sort of additional portions of this. How does that affect the longevity of the road and the overall quality? How does that, when do we get to a spot where that creates a resurfacing issue, or other things can, does that make sense, what question I'm asking as we're fitting this puzzle together?
Yes.
Go
Would
ahead.
you like to? I can start answering and you can
Go for
provide
it.
additional information. So one of the things we've looked at is to make sure that our joints between the pavement we're proposing and the pavement that will be added as development happens is not within the wheel path and therefore provides for smoother travel, and also it prevents issues with, say, compaction or other things. We anticipate actual completion of those roads to happen in the near term. We don't anticipate those lots will sit there for a long time, not needing then to have resurfacing. The additional consideration we're having as part of our utility design is to ensure that nobody needs to come and cut that pavement that we're installing. Instead, we will have planned for mains that extend onto parcels where we anticipate there will be either a further subdivision or the need for a main that connects onto some parallel line. So there's some planning happening right now, trying to avoid building something that will be damaged or disrupted as more development occurs.
And that was an excellent description of it. We doing it this way, like Ms. Sarah described, allows no cuts to be made to the roadway, and that's probably one of the worst things that will reduce the life of a roadway. We don't anticipate a lot of years difference between when the core road is put in and when the widening occurs. And so we don't see that as a problem for the longevity of the roadway.
What I think I heard, I'm going to repeat it back in my own words, and is that we're setting this up to be kind of very plug and play. So a developer can come in, and when they're ready to develop out a lot, they're able to add on to what's already there without disrupting what the core travel surface of the road. So this should be very easy for developers to not disrupt traffic, not disrupt the pavement, and such, to be able to still hook up. That's fair?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
And I know there's been a focus on core roads, and the reason why we lean towards core roads in portions of this scope of work is to ensure that we don't overcommit the city based on revenues. So it's a way of allowing for the connections to occur and have traffic flows that actually function and allow for access to all the parcels, but without overcommitting.
Thank you for that. Councilman Serrano.
Thank you. I'm guessing this goes to Mr. Lincoln. I could be wrong here. I constantly get bombarded about Costco. Now, I understand those might be sensitive negotiations, so I don't want you to break any type of confidentiality about Costco, but let's speak generally. While this thing is 2 to 3 weeks old, can you give us an indication that there's a ball that's moving, that this has shown the owner of that property or any other businesses or developers that are coming into that area that, yeah, Pasco means business, and even if we were kind of tentative or hesitant, this has helped seal the deal, or we're willing to move forward. And if you can't speak about Costco, let's just shut down the conversation. Be done. Again, I don't think you can, my recollection, but if you can speak to us about that, help us understand.
I can give you an answer. The passage of this financing tool is a very big win for the property owner. And given that it's a single property owner, and they've got a team of experts that are helping market the property out there, this is something that they are more than a little eager to add to the discussion with several commercial entities that might want to locate on the site.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I can just add to that real quick, there was an article that came out in the Tri-Cities Area Journal of Business that talked about things that different permits and stuff that have been let. So if you haven't taken a look at that, it's worth taking a look at too.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, hearing none, this is Director Worley's night. Next item on the agenda, Resolution Amendment Number 3 to Professional Services Agreement with Carollo Engineers Incorporated for Butterfield Facility Plan. And again, Director Worley or Miss Sarah?
Miss Sarah.
I think it's my night. Good evening, Mayor and council members. We are presenting to you an amendment to a professional services agreement for Butterfield Facility Plan. And you recently saw the finalized facility plan for Butterfield. And we are bringing to you an amendment to allow our consultant to evaluate the changes in water quality that City of Pasco has been experiencing along the Columbia River and reassess, based on the monitoring data that we have collected, reassess whether there should be a shift in the order of the projects proposed in that facility plan. And I'll give you some context. When the facility plan began, there were no concerns with water quality in the Columbia River. When we were about halfway through the process in the facility plan, we were notified that there was an algae bloom and quality concerns in the Columbia River. Yet, though the levels of those new emerging contaminants were not to the level where treatment was required. So the Department of Health encouraged us to start a monitoring program and collect data to understand trends, to correlate temperatures to quality and other things, and understand what was the potential for this to become an issue when it comes to treatment. So Butterfield Water Treatment Plant does not have the capacity of treating water for cyanotoxin A, which is a result of algae bloom. And with that, we decided to move forward with finishing our facility plan because we knew that the near-term improvements were needed regardless of the ability to treat cyanotoxin. We needed a new chemical building, and we needed new electrical building, and some other improvements that were basically end of life for some of the treatment trains that needed to remain operational. But that was strategic because having a facility plan allows us to pursue funding, to be able to do design in those very immediate phases. Yet we were aware that the more data we collected, we would want to incorporate those results from the data to understand what would be a modified schedule of capital improvements in the facility in case the levels of cyanotoxin A were to raise to the level where there is a need for treatment. Another benefit of including this additional chapter, if you want, in that facility plan is to have a plan in place in case this becomes a concern, a true concern that needs to be treated immediately or addressed immediately, and would put us in a better position to receive funding. We understand the Department of Health is keeping an eye on this, and there are programs and dollars from EPA that will be coming through the state to become available for emerging contaminants. So we want to be in that position where we are prepared to capture those funds to better serve our community by being able to treat cyanotoxin. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Councilwoman Roach.
So is the health department helping to monitor the levels of the presence of, is it cyanotoxins?
They have been involved in the monitoring program, and it's kind of like a regional effort. So we're in coordination with the other cities, and they are part of it. I am unaware that there are funds associated with the monitoring right now, but maybe the director.
There is a concerted effort by all the jurisdictions and the health district related to that issue, and we have been testing the waters in the Columbia River at several different locations. We take the first set of samples and we give it to the health district. They test it, and if they find a hit on cyanotoxins, then what they do is they go out, take another sample, and then send it to a lab at the University of Washington and have it test to a higher degree. And so we have had some initial measurements that indicated that there is a rising level, not in any of Pasco's inlets for our water treatment plants, but other agencies within the Tri-Cities region has. But each time this second set of tests, the more detailed, the more accurate ones have been done, they've all been non-detected. So right now, the river is looking good, and so we will continue to keep monitoring it. But like Ms. Sarah says, we want to make sure that we're prepared in case something changes in the next year or two to be able to address it quickly.
So is there any information sharing that happens across the 3 cities on this if they are monitoring and get something that maybe is not at the same location or point of entry on the Columbia River that we have?
Yes, everything is coordinated through the health district, and so whenever there is, all the cities are getting the test results from the health district, so everybody knows where, where it's been identified that these may be problematic areas. There are certain levels that have to be hit in order to determine whether or not it's going to be a problem for an intake for a water treatment system. And then there's another level for whether it is at a level that would pose a problem for human or animal contact. And the one for human and animal contact is higher than for treatment processes. The treatment process is very, very low to make sure that we don't ever have a problem. And so we have not had any issues with the second round of testing that indicated that any waters needed to be noticed that people couldn't swim in it. I don't believe, if my recollection. Okay. And so all the tests have been positive to now, both for the water quality related to water treatment and also for human contact in recreational uses.
So this amendment that's proposed would basically equip Butterfield to meet this new performance level or standard in what time frame exactly?
What it will do is evaluate based on the set of improvements that are already planned for it, which account for treating cyanotoxin. Although the improvements that are needed for cyanotoxin were originally set out at the very end of our set of improvements, so they were 20 years out, it would evaluate how to move those improvements around to be able to incorporate ozone specifically early in the set of improvements. That's what we anticipate will happen. The reason why we had ozone was a way of disinfecting water, not specifically tied to cyanotoxin, yet it is one of the most useful tools for treating cyanotoxin. So we happen to have chosen the most flexible type of treatment train, yet we anticipate that monitoring, being able to describe the events of algae bloom, and then anticipating in which way those improvements that relate to treating that specific contaminant can be brought forward in our schedule, and then what can get delayed. And what does that mean? If we delay some of the projects that we're planning the midterm, it means that more near-term improvements to extend the life of treatment processes that are nearing the end of their life will have to be added, because we built a puzzle, basically, trying to maintain in operation the things that we cannot replace right away and adding infrastructure. If we have to bring forward some projects that are really far in the horizon, it means that some other improvement will not happen, and we will have to find a way to make that specific component last longer. So it's basically building the whole puzzle again. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that more than answers my question.
Okay.
My brain is trying to wrap around all of that, but I appreciate it. I do understand what you're saying. But thank you for finding that and building that into this proposal and project.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, don't go too far.
Yes.
We have one more. Resolution change order approval for Lewis Street Overpass project. And again, Director Worley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I will take the beginning of this one before turning it over to Ms. Sarah. This item is one that you may remember that has been brought before council before. We're doing this tiny little project called the Lewis Street Overpass Project. And during the construction of it, we run into issues that end up needing change orders to the contract, things that were unanticipated, and things that we can take advantage of during construction of this project, and it'd be easier to do than after the project is built. One of the items that I want to mention about these change orders is a term called force account, which I think I mentioned it in the agenda report. Most of the change orders that you see here now are done by force account, and that is a term that's used in our construction contracts whereby something comes up, we run into something, we don't have time to necessarily work with the contractor and come up with an estimate. So we want them to do the work immediately so it doesn't delay the project and cost more money in the end because of the delay. And so we tell the contractor, yes, we want you to do the work by force account. And then our inspectors monitor the contractor's equipment, staff, and
Materials.
materials, that's it. And so we keep track of all of that, and then in the end, we add it all up, and that then becomes a change order. So that's what the majority of these items are tonight, are force account work plus a few others. And so with that, I will now turn it over to the CIP manager, Maria Sarah.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, again. I will walk you through the 4 proposed change orders, just providing some context for those. So you have seen prior change orders, change order 1 through number 7. Number 7 was brought to council probably a couple of months ago. Number 8 is the first change order we are bringing to you for approval tonight, and it has to do with the removal of fuel tanks as excavation of the area where the walls retaining the dirt right next to the bridge and on those approaches onto the bridge. We were digging to install, the contractor was digging to install foundations for those walls, and they discovered 2 tanks. There were fuel storage tanks, and those need to be removed and disposed of, which are guidelines for, because they're potential contaminant. And there was some soil removal and also mitigation, right, for that contaminated soil that need to be removed. So since this was in the critical path, we directed the contractor to continue digging and dispose of those, and we took, as Steve mentioned, basically accounted for material, time, equipment, and proceeded with the work. That is change order number 8. Change order number 9, it's associated with unexpected subgrade conditions. As you remember, the parcels where this work is occurring for, again, excavation and foundation for SCW walls, which is the walls that support that fill that we're installing for the approaches to the bridge. There had been buildings in that area before, and those buildings were demolished. As excavation began, it was identified that there were some bigger debris that had not been fully compacted, and there were some voids, as well as some remainders of walls and other foundations that had been left behind. We identified that this had to do with what the original layout of the bridge was. Therefore, there was never intended to be foundations in these specific locations where demolition had occurred. They were supposed to be somewhere else. So therefore, that compaction had not been done to the degree to where foundations for walls should be installed. Therefore, we worked with the contractor to identify specifically what footprint of area needed to be uncovered and then recompacted with some replacement of soils to make it suitable for foundations to avoid any future consolidation or movement on that fill that we were installing and those structures that we were building. So in this case, again, we track time, materials, and move forward with the work. change order number 10 has to do with, once more, SCW walls, which are are specified by our design engineer, yet fully designed by the contractor per our contract. So it's a specialized type construction, which requires the contractor to have their own engineer to design. During that design work, which is after the contract is awarded, it was identified that we had some power and fiber services going under those foundations, and the way we had designed those was not compatible with the foundation and the pressures they were going to experience under those foundations, needing to change the material of those conduits to be thicker wall. That is the different schedule that we talked about, Schedule 80. So it's a thicker wall. Because that thicker wall is not material that the PUD stores or stocks in their yard, we had to ask the contractor to pursue the procurement of those materials on a separate purchase, no longer provided by PUD, therefore constituting a change order. And that's, once more, that's change order number 10. And finally, change order number 11, on the east side of the bridge, we had a water line connection that needed to occur where we were relocating the water line and some services to allow for those lines to not be under the full depth of our additional fill. And unfortunately, those lines that are so old were not in the manner that we had as-built for, meaning that maybe they had been modified at some time or repaired at some time. So the fittings we had called out in our plans were no longer suitable for making that connection, therefore requiring new fittings to be purchased and installed. And so again, this constituted a change order, and in this case, we allow the contractor to move forward to reestablish those lines and services, and we track their work through force account. Okay, there was a lot of change orders, so I am sure there will be some questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilman Campos.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think going down looking at these, some of the things that you run into change orders for that you basically can't account for, obviously force majeure, you get your unknowns. Some of these things where you're planning them out are so cost prohibitive that even doing discovery, if they come up in your early planning phase, isn't worth it, right? With that said, I think 8, 9, and 11 are of that sort where, you guys might have been able to discuss these and maybe talked about them in some of your planning phases, but again, there's no way to fully know. It looks like 11, you thought about it, what is potentially underground, and some of them are 9. And there were some unknowns there. Your drawings didn't line up with what was actually there. So that makes sense. The only one that I have a little bit of heartburn over, and I'm not recommending we don't approve it, I'd like maybe more discussion between the rest of us, is number 10. Based on required contractor design, which contractors should have known the design prior to, deeper installation of a power line is required under the footings, SCW necessitating installation of Schedule 80 conduit. Since this particular type of conduit is not stocked by Franklin PUD, contractors do additional compensation for the purchased material. Again, it sounds like this could have been determined prior to and done some discovery on. Again, I don't have all the context. Again, I'm not recommending that we don't approve it. I just think it warrants further discussion by council, whereas 8, 9, and 11 seem very much slam dunks. They're not of any concern, but that's where I stand on those. Great job of giving some context on that, Maria. You did awesome. Maria, you did awesome.
Thank you for that. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Thanks, and I appreciate that comment. I was stumbling over the same one for the same reason. I would be interested in, I don't know if it's about contract structure, wherein we're just compensating them for the additional material costs solely with no additional fee on top of that, and that would have just been included in normal design or what. So I would be interested in some more information on that as well. If there's an immediate answer, that's great. If not, I will ask some different questions.
Yeah, we are happy to come back and provide that answer. What I can to provide all the details without misstating anything. But what I can say is our design team assume that the standard conduit, which is typically provided by PUD, would be adequate to be below those foundations. And unfortunately, because we didn't design the SCW wall, which is a contractor provided design, and it happens later than us specifying the conduit, this became a conflict, and should have installed the PUD provided conduit, they would have eventually failed. So instead of allowing that to happen, we recognized that there was more load than what we had anticipated. It's basically because of the weight of the fill, the weight of the block used for the SCW wall, which are these like panels that are concrete with foundation, and therefore we needed to go much deeper. So then there is that compounded effect of the structure plus the fill, and therefore that schedule of conduit that we had specified was unfortunately not adequate.
Right. Great. So my questions are, so everything so far on the change orders structurally are under the amount of the 5% contingency that we have planned in our project here. How much contingency is remaining? And if you don't have the answer off the top of your head, I would love the answer next Monday.
I want to say, and I can confirm this, I want to say there was about $1.5 million. So therefore we are proposing to spend, let me see here, about 600. So there is still another 900,000 about that, and I can confirm the numbers specifically. This is from memory.
I'd appreciate that for next meeting. And then I know we're targeting for next fall for this project to be overall completed. So we're somewhere in that halfway point. We've got some major milestones done, some of the biggest construction work. I would love a little bit more of a demo, not demo, but like a presentation about where our status is. I mean, there's out there on the website, there's a camera. You can go look at this. You can watch the construction happening if you'd like. So there's lots of good information out there, but just even a brief summary of like where we're at in the project. This is huge for Pasco, and I'd hate for us to be talk about at the beginning, talk about change orders in the middle, and then we have final product. There's room for in the middle for us to get an update. So I don't know what that right timing is. It might be next calendar year. It might be the right time to do that given our schedule and how much we have on our plates for the rest of this calendar year. But I'd love to see a presentation on that, or just like, hey, here's where we're at. Here's all the good work that's getting done. That's all I got. Thank you.
Comments from Director Worley?
The only thing I was going to add is it's not uncommon on large projects like this to have the majority of your contingency used while you're still doing underground work. Once you get out of the ground and everything's above ground, usually, provided that there's no design problems or anything like that, then the rate of change orders typically falls quite a ways off. So, not uncommon.
Comments from Mr. Brown, Councilmember Brown.
Excuse me, I concur with all of them except number 10 as well. But my question, I'm a what if guy. So is this the responsibility of the contractor, or did the city misinterpret what was needed? I'm just trying to be clear. So are we going to split the bill? Are we going to give it to the contractor? I want to simplify this.
I would say this was the responsibility of the city and the city's design team.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm clear. Thank you.
Okay. Director Worley, any further comments?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any further comments from council? All right. We will talk further on number 10 at next meeting and get some of those questions answered. Thank you. Okay. And we're almost done. I promise we are. Item number 6, miscellaneous council discussion. City Manager Adam Lincoln, and then we'll go to Councilmember Campos.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. A couple of quick updates. The city's participating in the Toys for Tot drive that will have several boxes available at City Hall, the fire stations, and the police station starting this week. That'll go through December 10th. It will conclude at Winterfest. Additionally, the Downtown Master Plan Open House will be Tuesday, November 15th. Meet and greet at Mercy's Pizza across the street from City Hall from 4:30 to 5:30, and the open house will be at 5:45 to 7 p.m. at City Hall. And then Director Ratkai will give an update on the Veterans Day ceremony.
Yeah, if y'all went out on last Friday, we had our second annual Veterans Day event at the City View Cemetery, and I just wanted to thank a lot of the community that came out. Councilman Serrano for emceeing the event. Arthur Brody was our keynote speaker. The Tri-Cities Civil Air Patrol changed the colors for each of the military branches at our Veterans Memorial. Pastor Micah Kruger from Faith Assembly opened the event with an invocation. And we really want to thank the great singing of our national anthem and God Bless the USA with Angie Middleton, Kaylee Welk, and Austin Altman, who sang that. And yeah, it was a great event. A little cold, but a lot drier than the year before. And we were just really glad to be able to hold that for the community.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll keep these very brief. I just want to give a shout out to our city clerk for providing documents to us last week. All the documents we've received, usually public hearings, I haven't known where to find those. And so we had a quick conversation and she was able to get those. So I'm appreciative of that. I don't know how the rest of council feels, but I'm glad I got to see the documents we received.
I get binders.
Yes, yes. Outside of that, I just wanted to revisit, and not to rehash discussion on item A, but I think just to let my position know, because it was kind of gray. I think if I interpreted Councilman Serrano's comments right, I think I look forward to moving on it as is, but giving it another level of scrutiny for next year. Interest rates were not expected at all by anybody this year, so just wanted to make that clear. And then I want to give a shout out to Director White, Chief Roski, and Chief Gear for giving great presentations tonight. You three are my favorite people. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councilwoman Roach.
I will just concur with Councilmember Campos on item A, and looking forward to going forward with that, but with some more discussion on that BDI proposal. Other than that, I just wanted to say it wasn't appropriate during the board reports, but last week there were a lot of events. Leo Center, so the Brochi Family Trust had their open house. They also invited us to, I believe they invited city council members to lunch on Tuesday, and then open house the next. I picked one instead of going to both. So went to the open house, and they've got a great community center that they've opened up in Tierra Vida. They're running a K through 8 school there. So we got a tour of the school, and then have other types of just community space there for their work. And then there was also Boys and Girls Club fundraiser that I got to attend. See Councilmember Maloney's wife. Thanks for letting her get out of the house and enjoy herself. So it was really great to see. They did a great job in fundraising, but want to remember that we also had discussed previously the possibility of how this council and how the city of Pasco helps Boys and Girls Club with their teen center, because that is a club that has never had a renovation and is way overdue for some improvement. So just wanted to mention those two things.
Thank you for that. Councilman Serrano.
Thank you. I'll just echo what Director Ratkai said. That was a wonderful event, and I didn't necessarily want to take up the committee times on this, but I do appreciate the opportunity to meet our veterans. There are many of you out there. God bless you for your service. Thank you for everything you stand for and have stood for. Meeting Mr. Brody, our guest speaker, was awesome. He had a great story, compelling, about how he kind of left the service and never put on the badge of veteran for over 3 decades, and until he had his aha moment. And that's a very compelling thing, because some folks leave those years behind and they don't know how to heal. And so, again, thank you for your service. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of that day. And, I said this, and I mean it with all sincerity. I'm not a great listener, but if our veteran friends need someone to talk to, I'm happy to do my best. My kids will tell you, and I said this last week. Favorite words are "quit crying." That said, I try to be sympathetic as much as possible, and I hold our veterans in esteem. So it's a great pleasure to be part of that service. So thank you.
Councilman Brown.
Just a quick go back I have. I think in my moment I said somewhat of a statement, or we're going to have a problem. I think I did. And I want to make sure that it's clear that I never put the city in a situation or a predicament where that's translated into a threat. So I want to be very clear about that. I thought about that after I brought it down a few notches. I never want to do that, one, because I love my city. I never want to see a disconnect or, that one emotional moment, starts wheels rolling. That's not what that was. That was not the intent to do that. But I was very clear in my statement, but it was not a statement of threat or else. It was not that. And I don't represent the city in that fashion. That is not how I process in my regular life. So no disrespect to the city or its constituents. But again, I hold true to my complete statement, except for that, and it processed it in my head. That was not the intent. If it was misinterpreted, I do apologize for that piece, for that portion. So again, I want it to go on record, which is why I always say, are you ready for me? As an attorney, because if you have to raise your hand and stop me from doing that, I never want to misrepresent what I love the most. And as you hear us talking tonight, there's a lot of love in the room. So this council is rightfully put together. We're compassionate and we love what we do and we're serious about what we do, but we have fun doing it. So this is just right. And because you're in the room, Mr. Attorney there, Ferguson, I just want to make sure I remove that. It's out there and I have no problem with that. I stand on that, but there was no disrespect meant, nor do I ever want to put my council members in a position to have to address that or respond to that. I'll handle that with your assistance if it needs to be. So again, thank you. I wanted to fix that.
Thank you. Councilman Milne.
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to talk about Veterans Day. I know for myself, having a daughter that's in the military, it's definitely challenging. We had the opportunity of last week of going over and visiting her, and I got to tour her base there in Hawaii. That part was pretty good, but it was pretty good. But I do want to say it is, as far as you're very proud of your family for serving. It's also difficult on a parent knowing that you're not going to see your kid for a long time, and then just the challenges of the whole world we live in and what could happen and all that kind of stuff. Especially when you think of if there was an attack, your kid would be wiped out immediately, being in Pearl Harbor. But I will say it's I have a new understanding for people that their family members, what they go through day in and day out, and I just want to say thank you for that as well. And then on a second thing I want to talk about, that this week we have the Special Olympics, and I know the council is invited to that. I will be attending that this Friday, and of course it's going this weekend. And again, another thing to just, it's great when you see people get to do different things that you don't really expect. And anyway, I just really look forward to attending this, and it should be a good time, especially the people that get overlooked in our community, especially on the Special Olympics. So that was my 2 cents.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that when we're talking about all the things that are going on in our community, we have these meetings and they've been really long. This year's been tough. I think without a doubt, it's the longest set of council meetings, the most executive sessions, the most work going on that we've had to experience, at least any member of this council. And I won't speak for and try to minimize anything that's happened previously. Just this has been a tough year, but there's a lot going on, and there's a lot more still going on. As you heard earlier, this meeting, we're continuing our discussions about the redistricting. We have heard your comments. We're going to continue hearing your comments as you send them in. So if there's input that you want to talk about, please continue to send it our way. The budget, I can't say again how important that item is. Not only is there a reflection of just an immense amount of technical understanding and work by city staff, it sets this council's vision for the next 2 years. This is what we're putting our money behind, not just our statements, not our goals, and not just our goals, but this is actually where the budget is going to be established, the expenses are going to be established. So this is a really important document. And I encourage any member of the community that's interested, take a look at it. If you're seeing something in there, if you have concerns and you don't see it being addressed in that budget, you're running out of time to tell us. We do have to pass that pretty shortly here. So please do let us know if we're not meeting your expectations and where that budget is not aligned, what you think our priorities need to be. And so, yeah, lots going on over the next couple weeks, and I'm going to be very grateful for when we are able to take a bit of a break in December, and have some of our monies back for just a few weeks. Thank you.
You know, this is what I love about our council. Everybody has something to say that's productive and constructive. Thank you again, Councilman Brown, for being part of City Council. Thank you, every single one of you, for supporting the diverse council that we are. A lot of things have happened throughout this last week, from the open house at Leo Center, where I chose to do the luncheon, and I was the only one. I got a tour as well, and was able to speak to a kindergarten class, which was fabulous. They had no clue who I was, but it's all right. On the note about the Special Olympics, I've attended that year before last. It's not only the reception of the runners coming into the center, but if you participate, if you go see the Olympians, you know, at their volleyball games, their basketball games, their gymnastics, they're fabulous. And whether they get an award, a medal, or not, they have a very positive attitude about what they're doing, about the crowd that's there to cheer them. So I encourage you all, council, city, everyone who's watching, please attend and cheer them. They love to see crowds. They get very excited just to see people out there supporting them. I do want to piggyback on all the comments council has shared today. It has been a long year. It has been a lot of very long meetings. So with that, I won't talk much more because we do need to go into executive session. So on that note,
Very brief, since there's something we haven't discussed yet. Just a special shout out to those in the audience who have basically joined us almost every meeting on that, right? Thanks to the Grand Boss for showing up every meeting. Hardly, I don't think I've seen you guys miss one. Shout out to Mr. Steve Bauman in the back who's participated in a lot of these. Again, these guys have been here with us along for the ride. So
every
thanks
Monday.
for everyone who joins us.
Thank you. Thank you for the new attendance in our crowds. Miss Sarah, thank you for doing the work
That Mr. Willie does.
that Mr. Worley supports. You know, again, just want to reiterate, this is a great council. We all get along very well. And we appreciate the support from all of you here in person and from the comments and emails and support that we do get. So again, I want to wrap up this meeting with a call for an executive session to discuss qualifications of an applicant for public employment per RCW 42.30.110 1G for 15 minutes. And we have all our staff, council, and thank you. All right. So it's 9. We'll return at 9. Do you guys need a 5-minute break? We'll add a 5-minute break. So to return at 9:40.
9:33.
33.
Not 40.
Let's cut. It is 9:34 and this council meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.